Welcome, everyone. I am John Ryan. We decided to get rid of the introduction just so we could get right to the big card this weekend. We have many big games happening. Kansas City, Buffalo, Ravens against those Steelers. And starting tonight, we might learn something about the Philadelphia Eagles, who, other than in week one, have not played a team with a winning record. So I've been on the fence with the Eagles every single week. And it's hard to back a team that I don't feel I know. We go up and down week to week in the NFL. If one team plays really good on the previous week, we almost expect them to underperform the next week, and vice versa. But there are some interesting numbers here too that I'm going to dive into right away, fellas. Commanders coming off a tough 28-27 loss to the Steelers, who continue to get zero respect in the NFL. Let's see. The Commanders are on a 7-0-1 ATS win streak, but failed to cover last week as a 2.5-point favorite. The over has gone to the window to cash the ticket in 2 straight games. Eagles have won 5 straight games, including a dominant 34-6 victory over the hapless, pathetic Dallas Cowboys. There's no other way to call that. 6 points at home. The Eagles have covered 3 of the last 4 when priced as a favorite. Commanders, points per game ranks 15th, total yards per game 18th, passing yards per game 14th, rushing yards per game 24th, which isn't all that good. Kind of a mediocre offense when you look at it like that. Eagles, 7th in the league in points per game, 10th in total yards, 9th in passing yards, and 16th in rushing yards, if you can believe that, with Saquon Barkley. Defensively, Commanders, 12th in points allowed, 13th in total yards allowed, 10th in passing yards allowed, and 23rd in rushing yards allowed. I already see a matchup there with the run game of the Eagles. Eagles, points allowed, they're 4th now at 19 per game, total yards per game, 6th, passing yards per game, 3rd, rushing yards per game, 12th. So there's a list of injuries, more so on the Washington Commanders side than anything else. Marshawn Lattimore, who they picked up at the trade deadline, is out with a hamstring injury for this game. Other names, there's too many to really mention here. Full participation by McLaurin, though, is huge for the Commanders. Jalen Hurts, full participation, has a dinged knee. A.J. Brown, limited participation, shoulder injury, but will start. The rest of them are pretty straightforward situations there. So the angle that I have here, and I'm just going to, there's 3 of them actually, 3 different ones. So this is a pretty powerful play. We're going to be betting on the Washington Commanders here. And I'm banking on Jaden Daniels to have a huge game against that secondary, which I think, again, they have not played a winning record team. So you can say they're 4th in the league in points allowed against the worst teams in the league. So anyway, 26-27 straight up is the system, 49%, but 71% against the spread over the last 30 years in the database. Bet on underdogs priced between 3 and 7.5 points. The dog has scored in 11 of their previous 12 quarters. Now that's outstanding. The opponent has gained a total of 800 or more yards in the last 2 games, being the Eagles. That is a sign of regression. I'm very bullish on the Commanders tonight to win this game and take the lead in the NFC East. Sorry for the delay, but let's start with Rudy here and see what he has to say and if he agrees with me.
You know what? The Eagles have yet to prove anything to anybody, and I think that they may have convinced Ron Jaworski in regards to what they lead into the 2024 season with. And by all stretch of the imagination, I don't believe that the Eagles really are. And I'm on the skinny post here, literally. Forget the thick post, the skinny post in regards to what they can't run. It's still yet to score an opening season touchdown, which is kind of, well, half-hearted, only from the standpoint of Josh thinking that the glass is half full and not half empty. They really haven't done a whole lot You have injuries that always take a role in regards to personnel groupings and packages and how that affects the overall game flow and what that actually looks like. The problem that I have with that is that the Eagles just have not gotten out of their own way. They still stand in their own way from a winning record against teams with winning records. So I'm not a huge fan of what the Eagles are going to bring Thursday night. I'm looking at the other side of the ball with that inch short game that could have moved the chains further against Pittsburgh. They feel pretty bad about that. And of course, Zach Ertz does as well, because this is truly a game of inches, literal inches. And it showed against Pittsburgh last Sunday. So I'm picking Jayden Daniels to have a seriously monster comeback game with plenty of passes, with plenty of shots to McLaurin, who's been an absolute beast this season for Jayden Daniels. And you have your other and been really on the offensive side of the ball for the Commanders. But I just think that when you look at them, they're more of a complete team. They have an identity, considering what they didn't look like the year before, in fact. So this is relatively shocking, not only for fans that I'm still waiting to see in the stands wearing their hog faces and or hog hats or something relative to going back to yesteryear for the Commanders, which may actually give this new regime even more energy and more vibrancy, especially in the passing game. So again, I'm a serious bull running through a crowd in Spain right now if I am Jayden Daniels and that offense. And then on the defensive side of the ball, last but not least, they're going to get after Jalen Hurts, especially with a nicked up knee. They're going to pressure early and often. I see a few tackles for loss. What I don't see is Saquon Barkley doing a backwards flip over anybody, much less a shuffle against this otherwise very stout Commanders defense. Maybe not even a 4-on-1 for that matter. So the game's going to go through Saquon. The problem is that it's going to become relatively predictable with A.J. Brown being injured as well. It's going to limit his participation. So I think the Commanders end up winning this one, at least a 2-touchdown win.
Wow, that is bullish.
Yeah. So Brown is playing. He's not out.
No, but he may see
he'll be limited though, I think, with
he may be limited.
Cannot do with that shoulder.
But the big thing is the one part of that Washington defense that isn't good is against the run. And obviously the Eagles do that exceptionally well. So I don't think it's going to be any kind of blowout like that. I do like Washington to cover since the line was 3.5, but I have the Eagles winning straight up. Mostly because Washington has a ton of injuries and the Eagles are realistically relatively healthy. And especially when you look at this point in the season, to really have nobody on this injury list outside of guys that are on IR, it's actually kind of impressive. So I'll take the Eagles to win outright, but I don't think they'll cover the 3.5. I think it's going to be another nail biter, but at least we finally have a Thursday night football game that is worth watching.
That is true. That is quite true. I actually don't hold this against you, but I'm in a bowling league on Thursday nights. And it's going to be the bowling alley is going to be hopping for that reason, that it's going to be a popular game to watch and see what happens. But I do think.
What are you bowling? What are you bowling? What records are we playing with here?
You want to know the truth?
Well, I mean,
no.
Yeah. I mean, besides, you can't lie. You're on
Okay.
on air. Like everybody's going to see.
This is true story. We're segueing into the bowling, realm. Unfortunately, we can't bet on bowling, but I probably would if I could because I know it so well. I am a New Jersey state record holder.
Okay.
The story is this: I was bowling with two other guys, summer league, 3-man team, obviously. They're both left-handers. I'm a righty. One of them is in the New Jersey Hall of Fame. Had just been elected, actually, about 5 years ago when this happened, before COVID. It was a season before COVID. And he is basically a 230-ish average. I was in the low 220s. The other lefty, mid to high 220s. So,
okay.
It was a scratch league. It was, everybody was pretty serious about it. So we go through, you bowl 4 games. First 3 games are uneventful, just bowling around average. Last game, things started to change. We each had the first 3. Then we had the first 4. Then the 5th frame came around. We all had strikes. It got, from that point on, it got serious. We were joking around a little bit before that, but from the 5th frame on, there was full attention to what was happening. We got all strikes into the 8th. So we're looking at a 900. The 2 lefties threw 300 games. And in the 9th frame, I stoned a 10-pin with a ball out of my hand that I thought, that's 10 in the pit. And I should have never thought that because the bowling gods heard me and the 10-pin stood up. But I'll tell you what, I've bowled in a lot of tournaments. You know, sometimes you are bowling one shot for like a couple $1,000. Making that 10-pin in front of that many people in the league, when the league stopped, like it just stopped. Like nobody would bowl because they were afraid they were getting into our space. But making that 10-pin was one of the toughest shots I ever had to make. So there you go, 879. And all of us were over the age of 50 too. Wow. You know, that was a neat little thing too. But anyway, we'll have to clip that out of the video, but I'm glad you asked. It's like golf, you know, I love golf too. And bowling is a right to left putt for a right-hander. You know, you can throw it fast with little break, or you can throw it a little bit slower with a lot of spin. And it's all about analytics. And for some reason, I think people know I'm pretty analytical.
I would never have thought that, John. Nor would I've ever thought you were left-handed. So there.
Well, I'm actually not left-handed. I'm right-handed. My 2 teammates were left-handed.
Oh, I see. Okay, I thought you were ambidextrous for a minute. Okay, well, fair enough.
I can throw a baseball both sides, but not nearly as well as right-handed.
I can hit left and right.
Yeah, I can hit both, but I can't throw very well left-handed.
I know.
Yeah, it's the baby bird learning to fly kind of throw. Like,
will it make it? I don't know. Let me try with my right. We know that's going to be
exactly.
You know, speaking of guys who can't throw, I'm going to segue this into Anthony Richardson only because through 8 weeks, he gets to start again. So Steichen's going back to the front when it comes to Richardson in 2024, but in those starts he is at 500. 59 of 133 yards, pass attempts, 44 in a completion ratio, lowest in the NFL. 958 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. The only quarterback in the NFL that has more interceptions than he does touchdowns. So it's kind of sad to see this unfold. And I don't think Indianapolis knew exactly what they were getting and or didn't do their homework to know that this is not the guy for them moving forward, being the 4th pick in the 23 NFL draft.
I mean, it took week 10 for Mahomes to have more touchdowns than interceptions. So, I mean, depends on how deep you want to look into that stat.
Yeah, well, true. But at the same time, Richardson didn't get his house broken into. So, you know, we look at this and we think to ourselves, did Mahomes try to throw something at the perpetrator or perpetrators before they left their house? And what was the accuracy? And was there a bet on that? You know, there's just so much.
There's definitely a bet. Yeah.
It's definitely bet to see if you can hit him on his way out, probably. And I think Kelsey would have the same argument. Was he going to receive it from across the street where his buddy is? I don't know. But
this robbery brought to you by DraftKings.
What are the odds of breaking into somebody's house, especially those guys in Kansas City?
Well, I guess after the bowling story, it's time to move on to the next game, which is I think this is the biggest one on the card, the Steelers and the Ravens. I know Rudy's going to have a lot to tell us about the Steelers and the Ravens. He knows both of them really well, but deep in his heart, he is a Steeler fan. And I'm becoming a fan too. I've been a fan of theirs because of the lack of respect that Tomlin doesn't get. You know, it just blows my mind. Not one losing season. How many times do I have to say it? I mean, like, and then last week, the way they won. I mean, that's a will to win, right? I mean, that's the moxie that I love with sports. Like a team just doesn't lay down. They get up off the mat and they hit even harder to win a game. If that makes sense. So, yeah, we have one little betting system here, and I think you guys will possibly agree with it. It's not that game, and it's not that one, but it's this one, I think. Well, maybe I didn't put it on. My bad. I actually have the one twice. So anyway, let me just read off the system to you. It's playing the under. And sorry about this. So I'll let Rudy talk, and then we'll get back to the system. I'll try to get the slide up real quick while he's telling us why the Steelers are going to win this game.
Well, this is actually a really good matchup, a familiar matchup with two very familiar foes. These teams know each other better than probably any other team in the National Football League. Yes, they're playing in their division, but there's a lot at stake here. There's a lot between the Ravens winning, as we know that Lamar Jackson is a AFC Player of the Week because of a very strong performance last week. Ravens are at 7-3. The Steelers are 7-2, and these guys, these teams, these coaches, these players are going neck and neck in this game. All bets are off when these two teams show up on the field. Interestingly enough, this is not the same backfield the Steelers are typically facing. They're facing a familiar foe, though, in Derrick Henry. Why? Every time they play Derrick Henry, whether he was in a Tennessee uniform, they're able to really control the pace of the game on the defensive side of the ball, preventing Derrick Henry from running, well, basically anything he wants. And they limited him the last time that they played against him in a Tennessee Titans uniform. But then again, a drain would probably have stopped Derrick Henry behind the very poor offensive line that they had there. Sadly enough, for Derrick Henry, this could be more the same from this Pittsburgh Steelers defense, even without Alex Highsmith, as they ended up going into free agency and picking up a couple of guys. One Williams picked up from the Jets, decided to make a very heroic touchdown catch from Russell Wilson into the end zone. And then a defensive guy, coming over from the Green Bay Packers, who have had a relatively decent season, but now find themselves facing off against another team, and the Bears they're very familiar with and have owned them since the 85 season. Yes, 85 Bears. I said it. Yes, I did. The bottom line is this: that the Steelers haven't won the AFC North in quite some time. And for those bettors out there, could the Ravens handle an under 3? Maybe. The Ravens are scheduled at 175. Steelers are at plus 145. So my question is whether or not you guys take this and over under at 48.5. Me, because this game is so evenly matched in all phases, I'm going to keep my money in my pocket, except if I was going to do a player prop bet, and that would probably be George Pickens and or Russell Wilson being able to throw the ball, receiving the ball, and or completion ratio before that, and pressures by that Ravens defense up front. But when you look at the last few matchups, the Steelers have won that 17-10 and then win it again in 23, win it again. And this is like an ongoing theme. Ravens have only won this once in 2022. So there's a lot of changes that were made more so for the Ravens because they're relying more so on the running game than they are simply the passing game. But you can never underestimate Lamar Jackson. You can't. It doesn't matter who you are, what team, whether it's a regular season or in playoff season runs, because Lamar Jackson will find his intended targets early and often. But all bets are off. All gloves are off. And this is out of the ring. So for me, Steelers will end up repeating and winning this game again. But this is going to be, obviously, as anybody knows this game and have watched this rivalry over years like I have, Steelers will take this 24-21.
Yeah, see, that's where I lean the other way. I think the Ravens are going to finally get one on the road here. And, it's the number one offense, right? They're number one in total yards. They're number 4 in passing yards. They're number 1 in rushing yards. And they're number 1 in scoring points. Now, how they square off is interesting because they're going against the number 2 as far as points allowed, right? So, excuse me. Ill time.
All right.
But, so they're going up against a Steeler team that, they're second in points allowed. They're 8th as far as defense in total yards. They're 23rd in passing yards, though. So that's where you're going to be able to attack this Steelers defense. But on the other side, the Steelers are going to be able to beat up on this secondary because the Ravens have the 32nd ranked pass defense. So this is a game that I would actually kind of take the over here because they both kind of square off in ways that they can exploit the other teams. I do like the Ravens on the road here, but I don't like them to cover because they, I believe, are a 3-point favorite on the road here. This feels like one of those 24-23 kind of games.
Interesting. I did get the system, but it is favoring the road favorite, and it also favors the under. Not going against Bo here. This is just what the numbers say. I don't know if I'm going to the window with this yet or not. But the Ravens are kind of in a regression situation, having played 4 consecutive games in which every game saw 50 or more points scored in it. Those trends usually, don't continue. But that under record hits 64% of the time, which means 36% of the time these games are going to play over. So, I always drill that home to people that just because it hit, it's a good one and it hits 70% doesn't mean it's going to win tonight. You're basically betting on ATS situations here. This one's gone 33-5. You can read what it says there. The road team is avenging a previous loss, which they are. The road team allowed 10 or more points over their previous opponent's team total. And that's part of that over 50 points, 4 consecutive games. And the total just has to be 38 or more points. One thing I will say, Bo and Rudy, is that it is odd to me that the line is this high. And that makes me very hesitant to bet the under here. I'd almost rather see this game start out, 7-7 in the first 8 minutes of the game and then bet the under. Because then I'm definitely going to get something in the low to mid 50s, which is obviously better than the current price now. So I'm probably going to keep the powder dry. And if it starts out slow and it's 0-0 or 3-0 the end of 1, I'll go in live with a couple pizzas and bet the over. And then conversely, if it starts out quick, then I'm going to jump on the under. And if neither happens, then I'm just going to not bet. Nobody is telling you have to bet just because you're watching a game.
So what do you have the over under at? What is the line on your side?
48.
40. Okay.
Which that seems high. Like we're so recency bias. This is a case study. You mentioned the Ravens defense, Steelers defense. Why is the total 48? Even though their defenses are not the same as historically.
Exactly.
It just seems pretty darn high. And when I'm wrong like that, it makes me think that the correct play is the over.
Right.
It's not making any sense to me.
And that's why you don't bet. If that number is too high, you just don't bet. You go to prop bets. Don't even bother with the gamekeeper money in the pocket because they are so evenly matched. Because the logarithm indicates that these guys, these two teams, these players are so evenly matched in their respective spots that's why that number is so historically high. Why? I don't know. I mean, it's not as if the Steelers don't know the Ravens and the Ravens don't know the Steelers. It's the first time ever they're playing an AFC North play. This isn't the AFC Central, right? We see this now as, well, because they're not familiar with the folks that they're playing. Wait, what? Who wrote that? I mean, that's absolutely absurd to suggest that the Steelers don't know and Mike Tomlin doesn't know this Ravens team. I mean, you face your formidable division foe twice a year. So exactly. How they're not familiar with them is beyond me. But like I said, and I'm sticking to it, I keep my money in my pocket on this one.
Oh, yeah. No, on this one, I don't like betting division rival games anyway, because all the analytics go out the window because they see each other all the time. So usually in games like this, I will just order a second round of wings and a beer and enjoy the game.
It's all you want to do as well. Everybody out there needs to do the same thing. Make sure you get some ranch too while you're at it.
Let's move on to the Texans and the Battle of Texas, the state of Texas with the Dallas Cowboys. In the beginning of the season, I don't think we would have expected the Texans to be a 7.5-point favorite. But the way that the Cowboys are going this year, I'm surprised they're not 11.5-point favorites. They're just showing no signs of life. Cooper Rush is not going to get it done. The whole game against the Eagles was dink and dunk. They didn't try to throw downfield once, and when they did, it was so inaccurate that 1 week of practice is not going to fix the problems that they have. In fact, maybe the next 5 seasons won't fix it, but we'll have to wait and see on that. I do have that's the Ravens slide. So here's the Texans versus Cowboys. We're going to bet on a team that is coming off a home loss, which the Texans are. That team has won 60 to 75% of their games in the current season. The game occurs from week 9 on out to the end of the regular season. 58-25 straight up. Money line at 7.5 is not worth it. It's the risk reward there is definitely not good. However, 71.2% that they do cover this 7.5 point spread. And it tells me to bet the Texans. And if I could spell that right, that would be good. Priced as a 7.5 point favorite. So there you have it. I'm on the Texans in this game. I see no other way to play it, but maybe you guys can show me a way to play the Cowboys somehow.
I don't think the Cowboys are playing the Cowboys all that well. I mean, we're looking at one-on-one drills, and they're looking absolutely horrible in every sense of the word. Now, mind you, this is not 1980, which is by far the worst season for the Dallas Cowboys at 3-13, at least before there was, week 18 in the National Football League. Mike McCarthy's been the play caller for the Dallas Cowboys and one other team. That's right, the Green Bay Packers. So he understands the Green Bay Packers. The problem is that the Packers know how pathetic the Cowboys are on paper, and they know how pathetic they are against the run, against the pass. And as a matter of fact, you would believe there's home field advantage here, but it doesn't exist for the Dallas Cowboys. And it exists more for, the Houston Texans. Why? They're the crosstown rivals, but in an AFC format with a very formidable C.J. Stroud under center. And they have D'Amico Ryans as their head coach. And all signs are pointing upwards for this Houston Texan team that just looked very, very good from last season. They've fallen off a little bit, statistically speaking, but when you look at their game overall, and the arrows are always pointing upwards for this Texas team, I just don't know that the Cowboys can really get themselves out of this conundrum as they now have started Dak Prescott out indefinitely with a hamstring injury, and not to suggest that Dak Prescott's done anything extremely relative this season because, he has not. Cooper Rush, who? And then Trey Lance spent more time in the NCAA system than he has played in the NFL? I don't think so, Tim. So there's just a lot to unpack with this Cowboys team. And if they were on the road, they may have a better shot of winning. How much of a better shot? I don't know. You have a better chance of throwing a rock at China than actually getting a touchdown in the end zone from Cooper Rush to CeeDee Lamb for 6. So I don't know that Mike McCarthy will end up staying there as their head coach any longer than this season. I see him on the outside looking in from that position. And then sadly, I think there's going to be a massive amount of turnover for this Cowboys team because Jerry Jones has very limited patience when it comes to things like this, being the owner and the general manager. So this is horrible. This is a dumpster fire that people just keep throwing logs in. And with every loss, a log gets thrown in.
And I'm here for it. Like
with your hands warm and the half gloves and everything.
Here we go, right? Yeah, no, it's I don't know how you can play this any other way than taking the Texans here. I mean, even at 7.5 point favorites, I think that's probably that's still an easy bet. I think this is one where the Cowboys probably get really kind of blown out. The Texans trying to get back on track after a few weeks of not playing their best football, going against a team that is unraveling. You lose your quarterback. Rush looked absolutely terrible last week. The only shining spot of that entire team the whole day was Micah Parsons coming back, and he had a day, right? Like he looked good out there. But it also looked like they needed 52 other people to have a good team. They have one star that was showing up, and then everybody else was just, present, right? So
with no participation trophy.
Yeah, I mean that's what it is. I think the Cowboys are probably going to get ran over here. I don't know if I would put money on the 7.5, but it would not shock me at all if the Texans win by 10.
I think it could be another repeat of the Eagles. Actually, I think the Texans are better than the Eagles, at least on paper. They at least have played and defeated some teams with a winning record, and that's why I still go back to tonight's game. And one of the prop bets I think I'll probably have possibly for the best bet of the show is over passing yards, Jaden Daniels, because the way he throws, that ball explodes out of his hand, and I mean the best defenders in the league can't defend it, and I don't think the Eagles have the best defenders in the league. But I could be proven wrong. I will admit it if I'm proven wrong, no question. Let's move on to the last game, and then after this, we'll do our best bets, where we did drop a percentage point because we went 2-1 last week. We're 69%. That's still damn good. I'm being sarcastic, but that's ridiculous. You have 9 weeks, and we're hitting 69% against the spread. It's unreal. But anyway, Green Bay. Going on the road to play Chicago. Green Bay is number 9 in points per game, 3rd in yards per game, 9th in points per play at 0.403. We all know I love that stat. They're number 3 in yards per play, 6.1. Third down conversions have hurt them a little bit. They're kind of mediocre in that category. Chicago, 24th and falling in points per game. Yards per game is 30th. 278. Points per play is 25th at 0.304. Yards per play, 31st at 4.3. Defense overall for the Green Bay Packers is kind of middle of the road. You know, they bend but don't break, and they're actually playing pretty good football right now. Bears coming off that horrible loss last week, and there's a lot of angles that support that it'll be like a dead cat bounce for the Bears. They won't. The chances, the probabilities that they bounce back with a great effort are quite low. I put it at about 15%, believe it or not. And again, I could be wrong, but I call it as I see it. And if I don't see it, I don't make it up. But Green Bay here is a pretty solid bet. I do think one of the slides had Green Bay on it, didn't it?
I believe so.
Yep. And it's favoring the under. And the reason I like the under here, you might want to play the Bears team total under, is I just don't think they're going to be able to move the ball yet again. We bet the under. The dog is priced between pick and 9.5 points. The game is pits divisional rivals against each other. And the favorite is coming off a home loss. 40-21 to the under for 66% over the last 10 seasons. Tells me to bet the under, currently priced at 40.5. And I don't know if it's going to go below 40, but I do know that unders of 37.5 over the last 5 years have hit 68% of the time. So just keep that in mind in case we get a flurry of under bets here as Sunday approaches. But I think Packers have no reason to take chances on offense, grind it out, win the game, 21-10, and move on to the next week. What do you think, Rudy?
There's a lot to consider here when you look at the firing of offensive coordinator for the Chicago Bears. And sadly enough, this was like the Texans were coming from every single angle. So it's not as if Caleb Williams had enough time in the pocket in order to make an executive decision to get that ball, thrown to where they were actually completed. There's a lot of fixing going on, and I don't think that firing someone is really the way to fix something, because now you're almost restarting the engine all over again. This time you're doing it without oil. There are no spark plugs and there is no battery. Why? Because the offensive coordinator brings that spark. They bring the battery. They bring the charge to the offensive system in order to fundamentally create first downs, to create fluidity. And without that offensive coordinator, you're starting all over again. You're putting grease on a wooden wheel, expecting it to run at 95 miles an hour. We know that's not possible. So Caleb Williams is a guy that he doesn't have the protection. And you get these teams every single year that want to draft a quarterback, but don't figure out how to put something together for the offensive line that's going to protect your very high value draft pick. And sadly enough, this is all too familiar with Chicago Bears. Why? Because they don't plan for the future. Caleb Williams isn't planned for the future, but if they don't have the guards, the tackles, the right people in the right positions to prevent a pass rush and sack after sack after sack, and this could be a potato farm when it's all said and done. I think the Packers have had their number since before Aaron Rodgers. And I think this is now you're turning the page and peeling another layer off that onion. Now that Love is going to find a way to basically outduel this secondary. So I think that when you look at what Caleb Williams is going to be facing, it's a very stout run. Not a whole lot of, you don't hear a lot of stuff, at least here on the West Coast, from the Green Bay press, Green Bay media, or Chicago media. You hear LA media, California media in regards to football and what that looks like. But to be honest with you, I just don't know that Caleb Williams is going to be able to stay upright in the pocket for very long and very often. And it would surprise me to see Caleb Williams finish a pass over 30 yards from snap to finish with one of the fastest snap throws in the NFL. So this is sad times in Chicago, and I'm not talking about the pizza because we know that's really good. The Bears team just isn't as good.
Yeah, no, I mean, this
they're
Bears
certainly
team,
better than the White Sox.
are they though?
I think anybody better than the White Sox. Maybe ask the Black Sox.
So here's the thing with the Bears, right? Is it's been 6 weeks since they put up more than 20 points, right? If you can't move the ball against bad teams, that's a problem. So it's, I take that back. I guess they did beat up on the Jags. My bad. They put some points on them. But so, you look at, they lose to a good Washington team. It was a relatively close game. Obviously, it was the Hail Mary there, but they had players giving up. Then you go against the Cardinals, and you literally have a receiver walking off the field, and you have Caleb running the wrong direction on a screen pass, right? Like all of a sudden, his protection went to the left. The whole play went to the right. So I don't know what he was doing. Some of these sacks that ultimately get Shane Waldron fired are. Don't get me wrong, they don't have a good offensive line, but you can't hold the ball for 5 seconds and not at least escape out of the pocket so you can throw the ball away. Like you can't stand back there forever. There were multiple sacks during that game that his offensive line actually did a good job, had a successful win rate on the play, and he just never got anything off. Now you can credit the secondary of the teams they were playing with some of that, but that's also decision making. Like you got to be able to at least push the pocket outside so you can throw the ball away. Is that a rookie move? Sure. But at some point you got to learn, right? So I don't like the Bears to do anything here. You lose your offensive coordinator. The players seem like they're not bought in anymore. The defense is now starting to slide, even though the numbers don't quite reflect it yet. You're seeing teams like Arizona just blow them out. This is probably going to be a game that gets ugly real quick.
Yeah, I like the side here too. I just don't see the Bears having any reason to get off the mat. Devastating loss, and they're out of contention. Realistically, if you're a player in that locker room, you're out of contention.
Oh, their season is over though.
It is.
Well, Dallas Cowboys season is more over than the Chicago Bears season is.
Yeah,
at least they have their starting quarterback.
Yeah, that doesn't matter though, because they're in a division that have 3 other teams that are probably going to the playoffs. Like
sure.
when they play those teams, they're just going to get beat down. This happens to be one of those teams.
And the other team is Minnesota,
and then the Lions.
Then the Lions, in no particular order.
And they're gonna get hammered by those teams.
Well, it's that time of the year too that the hammer does come down because there's no taking the foot off the gas pedal.
If there was any move,
of course, you're Nick Sirianni,
right? Unless you're Nick Sirianni, who some reason has like the ace up his sleeve, whereas guys like Mike McCarthy continually gets a free pass, but he's on the hot seat as well. Shane Steichen, now the second year, he probably gets another year, so I see him coming back for more. What that looks like for the Indianapolis Colts.
McCarthy's out because his contract's up at the end of the year anyway. Yeah. So even if he doesn't technically get fired, they're not bringing him back.
No. But barring some type of like major comeback in NFL history to come back and win out the rest of the season, I still don't see McCarthy staying there. Just saying. I don't see Jerry Jones renewing
even if he were to win
Time.
out, like I think the only way he stays is if he wins a Super Bowl, which
Well,
we can all agree that's off the table.
Yeah, very, very, very true. But Eberflus is a guy who continually gets a free pass, whether it's ownership giving a free pass. And the problem I have with this is that Eberflus is a guy who's never designated or designed to be a head coach of any NFL football team. And again, one of those things where you get into a mindset, and I'm going to stand on my soapbox for a minute. You get these coaches that end up on the likability box, and the likability means that they're the good old boys. They're the ones that are going to get things done. They're going to get the wins, and regardless of whatever it takes, and they're going to do and say all the right things and do the right things. But yet, when it comes to football time, all of a sudden you start high and you work yourself low.
I was thinking it was because he had pictures of people.
Well, you would think so, or maybe some kind of dirt on somebody. But I guess there could be a bet for that too. Or maybe a player prop bet. The coach is a player too. Maybe there's a bet that he has some smut on someone. I don't know.
Exactly.
But here's my point: is that the system of getting you see franchises all the time. Steelers have had 3 head coaches since 1933. Enough said. You have to have foundational fortitude in every respective NFL organization, from the front office down through the middleman, down to the ball boy and the water boy, and onto the coaches and the players. And all this has to matriculate down in such a way that allows for these teams to recognize their identity, formulate who they are, and move forward in a winning fashion as a collective group, in a collective effort with the same mindset. The problem is that you have these coaches that come from exiting from the NCAA system, or basically rinse and repeat coaches that get different spots in different places because they are liked, because they know a guy, which is the complete just tomfoolery to suspect and expect these guys to perform at the level that they really need to from the millions of dollars they're being paid. It's not like the quarterback can be the head coach. They can't be the defensive coordinator. They can't be special teams coordinator, all up into one, and expect to throw the ball. And who are you going to blame? Yourself. Why? Because you're wearing too many hats and there's not enough Chiefs. Okay?
Well said.
It's
Said.
Ridiculous.
Let's move on to our best bets here quick, because we know that Bo has a show coming up in about 10 minutes or so, and we want to get him out of here. But I really appreciate the soapbox, Rudy. Next show, I think we ought to start out with you on the soapbox and monologue for 5-10 minutes, and then Bo and I will join in.
Can I do a dum-dum at the end?
Yeah, I'll get the sound effects for you.
I'll allow it. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah, like JB on the Vegas sports radio show that you're on Saturday, I'm on Sunday. And yeah, those sound are a little loud, but they're effective, right?
Yeah.
Especially the crowd noise.
Yeah. Sometimes they boo when they should be saying yay. Oh, what do you do?
Anyway, my best bet is I'm bullish on the Commanders. I like them as a bet. I also like that's going to be my show best bet, the Commanders plus the 4. Don't be surprised if this line doesn't go to 4.5, because what does the public do on Thursday nights? They bet the favorite. And Thursday night favorites have done very, very well for a long period of time, but these things don't keep going on forever. And this is one game. It does not dictate whether my season is successful or not, even though I'm at 67% for the season. Just hope every single week we can go 3-2 or better, and just keep rolling. Total passing yards, pizza money bet. Jaden Daniels over 224.5 at ESPN bet, or bet ESPN. Laying -120 VIG. I also like passing touchdowns. Jaden Daniels for pizza money to throw 3 of them at 5-1. And then lastly, that he will throw a touchdown pass in the first quarter. This seems pretty good of all the 3 pizza money bets, because it's plus 275 that he throws 1 in the first quarter. And, why not? I just hopefully I'm proved wrong by the Eagle fans, and he doesn't play well at all tonight because of the Eagles' great defense. But at least we will have the answers on Monday of what this Eagles team really is. Rudy, what is your best bet?
I'm going to take, excuse me, I'm getting all choked up here over this one. The Steelers Ravens. Look, it does has me all choked up here. I'm going to have to take the Steelers in this one, not because I'm a fan, but because I know the margin of victory for the Steelers against the Ravens is historically low. It hasn't been a shootout, and we're not looking at 30-10 or any other nonsense number. Both of these teams are extremely formidable. And like I said before, this is really about who gets the job done, who's going to own it from the line of scrimmage. And because this game will truly boil down to offense versus defense, it's going to be a tough one, tough sledding for a lot of people. So I'm taking the Steelers in this one. And if there's an over-under, I would take the gosh, I don't know. If I was betting this game, which I'm not going to, but if I was betting this game, I would have to pick the Steelers at a very slim over. But because the line is so astronomically high, which it shouldn't be, I'm going to keep my money in my pocket on this.
I might be doing a team total and Steelers over their team total. I think that is a solid bet, actually. We have 2 dogs, Bo. Are you going to make it 3 in a row?
So I'm betting a over under here. So I like the Lions Jags to hit the over. The line on it is 47. And this feels like a game that might be 35-17, where the Lions just beat the brakes off the Jags, but the Jags get in the end zone a couple of times. And that offense for the Jags can score points. They just don't have a defense that does anything, which works out well for the Lions because they will move right down the field. So this feels like a line that might actually be a little bit too low for what the 2 offenses on the field are going to do. I understand the Lions have a good defense, but they do give up points. So I'm going to go with the over of 47 in the Lions-Jags game.
Well, there you have it, folks. Hopefully we can go 2-1 or 3-0. That would be nice for this week, but I think we have 3 solid picks and backed up by facts. You know, we're not just throwing darts at a board, and we have reasons for betting these games. And if you want to tail us, great. And thanks for watching the show. Thank you, Rudy. Thank you, Bo. And until next week, always remember to bet with your head, especially you Eagle fans. Ever over it, and may all the wins be yours.